How do you use that Beckn in a box to actually become Beckn enabled? There's a very seamless, a step-by-step solution for every participant to actually become enabled. There is a 6-step solution for BAPs. There's a 7-step solution for BPPs. Now, this is a summary of all the steps for both BAPs and BPPs. The row in between is basically common for both BAP and BPP. It basically starts off with selecting your role, deciding what sort of integration you require, selecting your domain, selecting your use cases, etc. And then there are some configurations which are specific to BAP, some of them which are specific to BPPs. BPP has maybe a couple more, just an extra step to actually become fully Beckn enabled, and then finally you basically generate an output which you can use basically. Let's look at each of these steps slightly in more detail. First step is obviously to identify your role in the network. Okay? In other words, basically, you need to first determine whether you are a BAP or a BPP. Now, how do you do that? Okay, very simple decision tree. Okay, you ask yourself whether do I have an inventory of goods and services? Okay, in my platform. If I'm offering if I'm holding an inventory of goods and services, I'm most probably a BPP. Okay, if not, I'm probably a BAP. Right? We are not talking about gateways and registries over here because they are mostly infrastructure providers. Their approach to becoming Beckn enabled is slightly different. We are talking about enabling endpoints over here. So this is just to basically give you a quick decision tree to find out whether you are a BAP or a BPP. Okay, so let's say you are a BAP. Okay, I mean, we'll talk about BAPs and BPPs separately, but the second step for BAP and BPP is to select what level of integration you require. When I say what level of integration you require, is that there are 3 levels of integration. First of all, one is the level 1 integration, that hey, I just need the protocol APIs packaged in as an SDK or as a service, right? And I'm going to build my own APIs. I'm going to build my own UI on top of it. That it has a lot of gives you a lot of flexibility, but obviously you will have to implement the client APIs and the client UI, etc., to actually become become usable by the general user. Right? And there could be use cases for these. Like for example, if your backend APIs are merely a middleware in your entire system, you can always choose a level 1 integration to just integrate with protocol APIs and get done with it. Right? Then there will be some network participants who say that, hey, I want to have level 2 integration, which means that I don't want to be bothered with the async protocol API communication integration with that and everything. Can you just give me some client APIs, which client basically synchronous APIs, which I can quickly consume and and use it in my UI and everything. Maybe that person already has a UI, he just needs to make his UI Beckn enabled. That's a level 2 integration. And there's a level 3 integration where he says that I don't have anything, I don't want to do anything, I want absolutely minimum engineering overhead but I want to quickly get Beckn enabled. Right? In those cases, you can choose an entire level 3 integration where you're not only getting the protocol APIs implemented, but the client APIs is also implemented. At the same time, the UI is also implemented. All you get is a UI at the end saying that, hey, here's the application you want, deploy it and move on. Right? So there are advantages and disadvantages in each, not advantages and disadvantages. I would say there is more of pros and cons of using each of these integration levels, which you can see here. The level 1 integration gives you enormous flexibility because it literally gives you bare bones protocol APIs, and you can design client APIs like the way you want it to. But obviously there is a high engineering overhead to this, and there is going to be a little bit of compliance required in the basis of what use cases are you implemented. You might need to have a stricter compliance when it comes to certifying, getting certified and listing yourself on a registry, basically. Right? And the level 2 integration, the amount of compliance is going to be a little medium because a lot of these have already been implemented and sort of been certified by the person who is offering these products. And all you need to do is develop your UI. So and if you already have a UI, then all you need to do is just integrate these APIs with your UI and you're done. And level 3 integration is obviously very low engineering overhead. You are literally getting an application in your hand. And but obviously the amount of flexibility you are expecting in your implementation is going to be low, because you are getting a prefabricated UI in hand to actually deploy. But yes, this is almost like a single click deployment solution, where you're getting a typical UI which you can host anywhere you want. Right. This is the step 2. Then the next step is to actually select what domain you want. Right. That basically defines what your context header is going to look like and everything. Right. So there could be a multitude of options given to the end the developer, where he selects whatever domain he wants, and it could be more than one domain depending upon his business models. And then once he selects his domain, he moves to the next step, where he selects the order funnel stages. Right. The order funnel stages basically tells you what are the APIs which I'm going to implement. Right. Now, why would I even ask myself this question? Right. Aren't we supposed to implement all APIs? Not always, basically. Some platforms could say, hey, I just want to do cataloging, right? Let's say Just Dial, right? Just Dial is just a catalog. It doesn't allow you to order on the app and everything, right? It just gives you a bunch of phone numbers and store names, etc. Right? But if Just Dial tomorrow comes and says, I just want to implement cataloging on my backend network, you can get the phone number of the store if you want to, but the transaction is something which you just need to call the guy up, and then you have to manage the entire show of transaction and everything. In those cases, a network participant might just choose to implement the discovery APIs and not choose to implement any other APIs as well, right? And then there could be other participants who say, hey, I want to implement discovery and order, right? I don't want to be bothered with status updates and tracking and everything. The moment I receive the order, I'll confirm the order, and you'll have to manage the tracking and the fulfillment on your own. Maybe the tracking is, it's not via the network, maybe it's off the network, maybe via an SMS, or via an external infrastructure or anything. So some people might choose to just implement the discovery and order APIs, which means that they are only implementing search, select, init, and confirm APIs. The status, update, track, cancel, rating, support, all of these APIs are not being used anywhere. Then there could be people who say that, hey, I'm going to implement discovery, order, and fulfillment, in which case they can also enable tracking, enable cancellations, enable order modifications, and enable and status updates, frequent status updates on their APIs, and not be bothered with support or rating, etc. Which they want to rely on maybe some external rating agency. So there could be multiple use cases. Now, these four combinations are by no means the only combinations that can be selected by a particular participant. This is just for an example, just to give you a logical breakup of what all people can generally implement at their backend. And lastly, there could be people who there could be network participants who want to implement the entire stack, right? Depends actually about, it sort of depends upon how, say somebody wants to say, okay, I don't want my UI to be too cluttered or anything. I just want very basic order APIs, which means that they might not even implement search. They might say, for example, somebody is implementing something as simple as a scan and unlocking a bicycle. Now, scanning and unlocking a bicycle does not involve discovery. It does not involve adding an item to cart. Does not involve payment terms, etc. All of that is encapsulated within a single API, which is your confirm API, right? So one could actually just choose to implement the order APIs, right, and then be done with it, and just release an application for that. Okay. So there are various ways. So these BAPs and BPPs basically select the various stages of the order funnel which they want to implement. It can happen both at the BAP level, at the BPP level as well. As in when I said at a BAP level, it might say the choice is more of what I want to show to the end user. The BPP is that what I want to actually offer as a business case, right, to my end customers, basically. So that's the selection process of what are the order stages, right? Now, after the step 4. Now the sort of the flow breaks into two flows, where one is specifically for BAPs and then one is specifically for BPPs. Okay. Now for BAPs, basically the BAPs are asked to select what are all the various use cases which they want to enable within each of these order stages, right? They might want to choose a particular types of search. What do I want? Do I want to enable search by category? Do I want to enable search by item? Do you want to enable search by item ID, or by fulfillment, payment, etc.? Then it might also want to implement how it wants to actually fit, what sort of filtering and sort options it wants to give to the end user. It could be filter by item, filter by category, etc., or it just wants to make it a free text search. So those kind of your use cases can be enabled by enabled at the discovery stage. At an order stage, a BAP can either choose to say, hey, I will, I can allow adding of items, I can allow adding of add-ons, or promotional offers, etc. Do I want to enable that? Do I not want to enable that? Depending upon the network, what the network policy says, or maybe what the kind of UI it wants to actually give to the end user. It can choose whatever it wants, right? Same thing for innate, what sort of payments it wants, what sort of what sort of fulfillment use cases it wants to enable. The same way it can actually select for the orders. It can select what sort of payments it wants to enable. Do you want to enable payment if you always want to collect payment before before the transaction, or during the transaction, or after the confirmation of an order? Those sort of use cases you can select during your order APIs. Fulfillment, pretty much, there are a lot of use cases in status and update, and you can also select what sort of updates you want to allow to the end user, and what sort of cancellations, etc. And same thing for post fulfillment as well. What all items you want to actually allow the user to rate? Okay, what all items you want to allow the user to get support for, etc. Those kind of use cases you can select, and you can go to the next step after that, right? There is a similar sort of selection process for BPPs, but it's more about actually configuring how your catalog looks like, and less about what are all the ways you can actually do search. So this is sort of, catalog is sort of the mirror image of search, right? Basically, your catalog, a search contains what all items in a catalog you can browse or search via. And the catalog configuration basically tells you how your catalog is actually structured, right? Do you want you want a single store catalog? Do you want to onboard multiple stores? You want to have single store, multiple locations, single store, single locations? And then if you want to add how are your items organized in your catalog? Do you have individual items, like like Uber has just 4 flat items: Uber X, Uber Go, Uber Black, etc., right? They have a flat list of items. Or do you want combo offers in your items? Do you want items to have a parent-child relationship? Do you want to have multivariant items? So those kind of configurations you can have in your BPP. Same thing for add-ons. You want to have item-specific add-ons, which means add-ons you can actually add with an item. Or do you want to also enable promotional add-ons that, hey, based on a particular set of items that has been added, I will add a free say coupon, or not coupon, but free promotional item as part of the catalog itself, right? Sorry, as part of the cart itself, right? So those kind of things it can configure. Then yeah, you have add-ons, and then you have offers. What all offers you want to provide to the end user. Do you want offer at your platform at the BPP level? Do you want to enable offers at a store level? Do you want to enable offers at an item level or a category level? Do you also, and one more interesting thing you can actually configure is that, do you want to enable timed offers or timed items? Like, for example, if you want to enable flash sales, or flash categories which are enabled. So those kind of configurations, like, for example, an offer is only valid for a particular period, in which case the offer will automatically activate and deactivate after that particular period, instead of you manually doing that activation and deactivation at your end. So these are the various ways one can organize, or BPP can organize its catalog. But his organization is not going to be just restricted to a catalog. He'll also have to sort of configure his fulfillment and payment configurations as well. So there is an additional step for BPPs where they are selecting what sort of fulfillment it's want to enable. Do you want to enable single pickup, single drop, single pickup, multi drop, multi pickup, single drop, multi pickup, multi drop? right? What are all the payment modes you want to enable? Do you want to actually, do an offline settlement, or do you want to enable a payment gateway integration, right? And then it also allows you to select what are the modes of fulfillment you want to offer, what are the types of fulfillment. Do you want to enable home delivery, or you want to enable home delivery and store pickup? So those configurations can be done at a BPP level, right? Once all of these use cases has been selected by a BAP and a BPP, that sort of ends the total process. What is the final output after this entire selection process, right? The final output, as I had mentioned earlier, can be of three types, right? There are three levels of integration which any participant selected at the beginning, right? Now, if a participant had selected a level 1 integration, what he will basically get is an API development framework. Basically, he will get a bunch of protocol APIs already available to him as part of as part of an SDK, and a bunch of endpoints available for him to actually receive callbacks, right? Now, what he does over and above those implementations is completely his choice, and they can build any sort of packages around it. They can actually build more SDKs on top of them and everything, and actually offer them as separate packages, right? And for level 2 integrated particles, basically they will get they'll basically get a client SDK, like a JavaScript SDK, an Android SDK, an iOS SDK. For BPPs, they might also even get something like a Magento plugin, or a WooCommerce plugin, right? Or Shopify extension or anything. So those kind of SDKs will be available to a BAP and a BPP when they choose a level 2 sort of integration. It sort of logically seems that the level 2 integration will be a very popular choice by most platforms, because most platforms generally who want to become backend enabled already have some sort of a user application running. So what they will usually want to need is want to implement is basically an SDK sort of a package which they can quickly integrate and compile with their application and launch. That's a level 2 integration. And then there, as I said, for level 3 integrated participants, all they will basically get a UI, a link to a UI, a user application. It's mostly in the form of a PWA in case if you want to do generate, but I mean, obviously other translations are also possible. One should be able to download an APK or iOS application, etc. But obviously that will also have to go via some other compliance policies at the Google level and at the Apple level and everything, which Beckn has no sort of doesn't have that much say in. Otherwise, these are the three possible outputs which can come from Beckn in a box, which can quickly allow any network participants to quickly become Beckn enabled and become ready for launch. So that's Beckn in a box. Yes.
Yeah, I think the reason we thought Beckn in a box would be interesting is we are already noticing there are software application as a service providers who are building in plug and play Beckn in a box solution that any commerce platform, either on the buyer side or the seller side, can kind of subscribe to and integrate so that they can be enabled to do business on an open network quickly. Vis-a-vis they trying to learn from the protocol from the first principles, like attending these sessions and starting to implement right from the basic API details upward, they can just do a plug and play model. Beckn in a box is a plug and play to a mobility system already in place, Beckn in a box plug and play to a payment system or a POS system that is already in place, to a chat application that is already in place, to a virtual assistant that is already in place, or to any other e-commerce aggregator system that is already in place, instead of the developer team of that company trying to build everything from scratch. There are providers who are trying to build Beckn in a box solution and offer that as a service. Foundation is just for the purpose of demonstration and not to offer that as a formal service. We are also kind of building a Beckn in a box for both the BAP and BPP as an open source solution and put it out there for anybody who wants to use it and build from there, or kind of make others also see and build something similar. and commercialize their side of the solution with more features, more things built in. We are trying to put a demonstrator Beckn in a box open source solution out there, so that if any of you want to get started, just give us some more time. We should have some versions of Beckn in a box in BAP and BAP in this quarter, and you can start using that to integrate. The only challenge is, as a foundation, we are not in a position to offer too much of support. We will put some documentation and everything. The foundation is not intended to be a software support or a software service provider in any way. This is just a demonstration app with source code. Request is that you will find your developer teams or a vendor who can take the source code and build something specialized for you and offer that as with a maintenance and support arrangement. But the idea is to just demonstrate that it is possible. And this Beckn in a box or BPP in a box or a BAP in a box, both of them are sector agnostic, which means the open source version allows you to build a mobility BAP or a mobility BPP on it, a delivery BAP or a delivery BPP on it, a retail BAP or retail BPP on it, or a hospitality or a travel BAP and a travel BPP on it. It allows for that configuration. Ravi, please correct me if I'm wrong. It allows for that, which could mean that even the user experience at the level 3 also allows for that configuration, which is kind of little tricky when it comes to user experience. You may have your own views around how you want to build your user experiences for your respective users, but this open source gives you some kind of a framework to start thinking around that and accelerate your development work so that you can be backend enabled quickly and join the network very quickly. So that's the reason why we thought it'll be useful to put it out there for you to visualize the possibility and to also accelerate your engineering efforts without having to learn from the first principles of the specs and the API. Yeah, over to you.
Thanks, Sujat. Thanks for that elaboration. Great. So let's move on. So that this is basically what you get as an output from Beckn in a box. Now there are just a couple very small topics which I want to discuss. I think we are very nearly near the end of the session today. I want to reserve a lot more time for Q&A, given that I'm sure that there will be a lot of questions based on what you have seen as of now. So quickly going through the next few sections. This is more about the contributions and the governance around the specifications itself. So how does the specification basically evolve, right? Now the specification is basically hosted on GitHub. Okay. Now there are various ways to contribute to the specification. One can always, given that the specifications are currently under CC BY ND license, the specification doesn't allow sort of forking and creating a separate specification on its own. As of now, the specification allows contributions to be submitted in the form of GitHub pull requests. It can also be in the form of raising GitHub issues, which can always result in a pull request later on. Or it could also be in the form of an RFC submitted to sort of comments at beckn.org. It basically takes each and every aspect of the specification and creates an RFC sort of a document. So at Beckn we call them CSF, which is commentable spec files, to actually note to actually log the evolution of the specification in the form of various drafts. Those drafts basically gets published at an in the Beckn website. It will sort of be it's actually undergoing our developer website is actually undergoing a revamp. So where all of these drafts will be accessible to every user, and those users will be able to create more drafts out of them and actually submit them as an RFC to the network, so that it could probably be merged with a specification at some point in the future, depending upon the various compliance checks in terms of interoperability, in terms of privacy, in terms of data protection, etc. There will be a lot of policies around that. Basically, I mean, not privacy and data protection. That's more of a network level policy. But at the specification level, whether it is interoperable, whether it actually whether it is backward compatible with existing implementations, whether that tiny change might result in a lot of sort of migration migration